Okay, so yeah, let's get going. I don't want to go overtime for you guys because there's a good amount of material here. I've tried to streamline things for you guys to keep things just very much to the fundamentals and the core, I guess, concepts that I want you guys to know. Um, but yeah, again, what Tim said, I'm a certified financial planner working in Regina, and I've been doing so for just under 5 years now. Yeah, I predominantly work with millennial women, but my practice is a little unique in the sense where I'm actually business partners with my dad, who works a lot with retirees. So the nice thing for me is, even though I'm working with millennial professional women kind of in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s, I get to see a lot of retirement based planning as well. So it's kind of a nice thing. So for tonight, the way I've kind of laid this out, I don't know why three just for me is like the magic number. So I'm going to kind of always come back to these three core concepts for you guys. But yeah, I think we're going to kind of start off. I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis on what financial planning actually is. And it kind of goes back even to my own getting into the industry. And I think it took me longer to get into the industry because I, honest to God, didn't even know what it really was. So we'll just kind of quickly touch on that. And then the way I've structured the presentation is to really give you guys, like I say, I always go back to these foundations or these core concepts. And so it's going to be these three core concepts to build your financial plan, because I think sometimes too, there's so much buzz around the financial world that we kind of get lost in it. So I'm just going to basically, in a nutshell, if you guys can do these three things well, then you guys will be well on your way to having a solid financial plan, and everything else will kind of fall into place. Okay, so yeah, so just to give you guys a little bit of background about me, back when I was 18, just graduating high school in Regina, I had my eyes actually set on marketing. That's the world I wanted to get into. And because it was a business profession, my dad at the time, who was a financial planner back then as well, kind of approached me and said, hey, listen, like if business is something that you're interested in, like maybe financial planning is kind of what you want to get into and come work with me. And probably just being like a very typical 18-year-old, I was like, no way, no thanks, don't want to work with my dad. I'm good. Yeah. So I pursued a degree in marketing and small business management, and then went to work for several different companies in Regina, fully based on the marketing side of things. So I was in operations management for a little bit, did some frontline work with sales. Yeah, so it was good. It was a lot of really good experience. But then it's funny, kind of later on, about when I was 27, 28 years old, it was actually my mom who came and floated the idea by me again to say, hey, listen, your dad really needs to start thinking about the succession plan. And if you're not it, he needs to start looking for someone. So is this maybe something that you would want to do? And I think probably just having, 10 years of life under my belt, money and financial planning was something that was on my mind more so than it was when I was 18. So I was intrigued, but I still didn't quite understand what it was. And then, a year in, he kind of gave me like a trial and said, okay, let's test it out for a year. Here's a bunch of books and magazines to read. But yeah, as soon as I kind of understood what it was all about, I was like, oh my God, how did I not do this sooner? It's because it's such a great thing. It's such a great profession. So I kind of figured that's how to start the presentation for you guys, because I know even coming into the industry, I didn't really understand how certified financial planners help people, what the layout looks like, what kind of service you get when you work with a certified financial planner. So yeah, I'm going to lay that out for you guys right now. So in terms of, I guess, kind of I call them the six buckets of financial planning. These are kind of the core areas that when I'm working with clients, I'm making sure we're hitting all these buckets. And so just quickly for your guys' own knowledge, so financial management is usually where we start with clients. And so it would be, me and the client going through, this is your cash flow, this is debt management, just kind of understanding, okay, like what do you have coming into your pocket every month? What's going out of your pocket every month? What does your debt situation look like? Sometimes education planning for parents would kind of fall into this category as well. But really the financial management portion of the financial plan is just kind of getting like a snapshot of like, okay, where are you today? And then where do you want to go tomorrow? So it's goal setting, and then also just getting a really good idea of what you guys are wanting or where you guys are at. So that's kind of the one piece. The next piece is that insurance and risk management or protection piece. And what I tell people is this is kind of the part of the planning where I'm sitting with clients and I'm literally throwing scenarios at them saying, okay, if this were to happen to you, how are you covered, or are you okay? And so that can be anything from if you broke your leg tomorrow and couldn't work anymore, or if your partner suddenly got hit by a bus tomorrow, all these different things. We just start going through different scenarios to see where are the gaps, and if there are gaps, then how do we start to fill in those gaps. The next piece, investment planning. This is the one I feel like is very, I don't want to say sexy, but it gets a lot of attention. People love talking about investing. I mean, Tesla is a big thing right now. Bitcoin's still a big thing. Just the stock market in general is exciting. So I feel like this is kind of where everyone zones into when we get into financial planning. When people come see me, a lot of the times the questions they ask are, how can I make my money grow? So that, of course, is kind of in and of itself investment planning. So that is a piece. But what I tell people, I'm like, it's great and we'll get there, but it's just 1/6. It's one bucket of your whole entire financial plan. And so usually what we want to do is cover these other things first. But yeah, so that's investment planning. It's just exactly that, looking at investments, looking at different, places to put your investments, what makes sense for you, all those kinds of things. And then tax planning is another bucket. It's fairly self-explanatory in terms of what myself and my dad or business partner do. We kind of we'll comb through people's tax returns, and we actually start to figure out, okay, are you utilizing or are you getting all the tax savings that you can? And if you're not, then we try to help and strategize for you. Okay, if, for example, if your income's at a certain level, are you currently putting money into RSPs? And like, what does that look like in terms of tax savings, like dollar per dollar? And we'll do those calculations for you. Also in our practice, it's just a service that we do for clients. We just actually do personal tax returns. So that's just another kind of piece of the puzzle that we like to offer clients in our practice. Okay, and then the fifth bucket is retirement planning. And again, this is kind of one where, depending on what stage of life you're at, when I'm working with millennial clients specifically, it's a lot about, okay, is retirement even in your brain right now? And if it isn't, I kind of force it in there just to get something down on paper, because it's just to get people to start thinking about, okay, like, where do you see yourself in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, however far out you are from retirement, and what do you want it to look like, and it's just to start to, really ask questions like, when do you want to retire? How much do you want to retire on? Questions that come up now, actually more so in this day and age, I feel, is retirement, is that even a thing, or is it kind of where you'll, stop one type of work and maybe move into like a part-time thing or a consulting gig or whatever it is? So there's lots of different avenues for retirement now, and it's just kind of deciding, okay, like, what makes the most sense for you. And then the last bucket is this estate and legal planning. And so this is will creation, this is powers of attorney, healthcare directives. What the certified financial planner is supposed to do and should do is basically helping you figure out, if you don't have a will, the important things that you need to put in place to get a will done. In terms of beneficiaries on different accounts, we look at, if you were not here tomorrow, is all your money and are all your assets going to go to the people that you want them to go to? And if not, how do we structure that so it does? And yeah, and not a lot of the time, all the time when we're doing estate planning, we're working with a lawyer. So yeah, that's just another piece of the puzzle. For you, it's kind of, instead of you having to go out and find different professionals, we just help you based on all our resources and the people we work with. We kind of bring them into the picture and say, okay, we've got this wonderful lawyer that we work with, and she's going to get the will done up for you. So yeah, so anyway, so those are kind of the 6 buckets of financial planning. And to put it in just like a quick nutshell, when we're doing plans, basically the 3 components are, the first is like I said, we just goal set. We kind of look at, okay, what do you guys want to accomplish with your money? Where do you see yourself? Where do you want to go with your money? All these kinds of things. And we get that down on paper. And then we get a snapshot of where you are, which essentially is just all your statements, the types of money that you're bringing in. So that'd be paychecks and just everything to do with your finances in terms of these 6 buckets. And then once we have all the information, the second piece is where you get to kind of sit back and relax. And the certified financial planner, essentially, we go in and we create strategies for you based on the goals that you've laid out for us. So I'm looking at these 6 different buckets while I'm creating these plans, but I'm always bringing it back to your goals as the foundation. And then the third kind of piece is that implementation and recommendations. So of course we come up with a legitimate financial plan for you, which is like cool, and that's, you know, it's a nice piece, but if we just gave you a plan and said, okay, see you later, like good luck, I mean, it's not really going to do much for you. So the whole implementation piece is actually where I feel like our help is the most valuable, because we legitimately walk you through every strategy and help you do every single thing that we've laid out for you as a strategy or as a recommendation in the plan. And then, of course, it's just ongoing support for years and years after that. So nutshell version, that's kind of what financial planning is all about, and that's kind of how it works. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you guys had a good kind of grasp on that. So the next slide here, cheat sheet for getting started, and this is back to what I was mentioning at the very top of the hour, is just that I want to give you guys these 3 concepts that if you kind of get these nailed down, your financial plan will be well on its way. Yes, there are other pieces to the puzzle as you've just seen, but if you can kind of focus on these 3 things and get these really, you know, just well thought out, well planned for yourselves, I think you'll be good to go. Okay, so future savings. I think it was about 7 months ago, I started an Instagram page for my financial planning business. And I polled everybody and just said, you know, if you had gotten advice earlier, like what do you wish you would have known earlier in terms of financial planning? And as you can see, this is kind of, I mean, there was I feel like a flood of messages that came at me, but this was the majority, and this was kind of the main topic that came through. But as you can see, most people were just kind of screaming at me, I wish I would have started sooner. And I wish I would have understood what investing could do for me. I wish I would have invested sooner. So this was kind of the concept, or this was what was coming at me. And so for you guys, I wanted to make this kind of the first building block, but also kind of lesson for you, just to show you what it means to start putting money into investing and what that can look like. So this concept, where does your paycheck go? It's a good exercise in terms of just trying to, wrap your head around. And this is, I mean, some people, you can do like spreadsheets in terms of like expenses, but I like this exercise because it's just easy and painless. But I basically say, just take a piece of paper. I have one here. I won't rip this one because it's actually important, but just so you guys get an idea. For every expense you've got, for every amount that goes out of your bank account every month, I want you to rip a piece of paper off. So I just kind of give examples like mortgage and rent. And of course, these are the expenses that need to get paid every month, which makes it a bit easier because most of us have these things that are recurring every month. We have to pay them. Otherwise, we lose the proverbial roof over our heads. So for every expense, I literally tell people just rip a piece of paper off until you get down to every expense that you have to pay for every single month. And by the end of it, usually people end up with just kind of like this little like piddly scrap of paper, or I mean, if we're being realistic, there's usually no paper left by the end of it, just because, I mean, things are expensive these days and bills kind of add up. And so the next thing I ask people, and like I guess I would ask to you guys, is while you're sitting there kind of ripping off the pieces of paper, did you account for yourself, or did you count your future savings as one of those expenses you have to pay every single month? And a lot of people say no, like usually savings is something I do after all the important bills are paid. And so this whole pay yourself first concept basically flips that whole script on its head. It says, instead of treating your savings as an afterthought, something you do after all the bills are paid for, why not kind of make that one of the most important bills you pay every month? So you are taking care of yourself the same way you take care of your mortgage, the same way you take care of your phone bill, all these other bills that have to get paid. And this was actually, this is not my concept. This was made popular by David Chilton in his Wealthy Barber book years and years ago. I believe it came out in 89, which makes it 32 years old. So I mean, this concept is not new by any means, but there are some fundamentally good concepts out there that there's a reason they've kind of gone through the test of time. This one is still a great one. I walk through this with every single client I work with. And yeah, it's essentially just treating yourself, whether it be savings or investing. This concept was specifically towards like future investments, so saving for your future. But it's just treating yourself like the most important bill you pay. And so this 10% rule, where this kind of plays in, is because people will ask, okay, so I mean, I feel like I'm being stretched so thin already. How much am I supposed to be saving for myself, or how much am I supposed to be paying myself first? And the rule of thumb is 10%. And actually, I had a really good question the other day. A friend asked me, she's like, okay, so is it 10% on your gross income, or is it 10% on your after-tax income? And the answer to that is, when this book was originally written, it was based on gross. So for example, if you make $50,000 a year before taxes, you would base that 10% on the 50,000, meaning you would theoretically put 5,000 away in 1 year for yourself, which works out to about just over $400 a month. So yeah, so that's how you can think of it. But I mean, theoretically, you could technically base it on your after-tax income too. It'll just be a smaller amount. So you definitely probably want to go with the gross. But yeah, at 10% is just, it's a good place to start. And some people too say, honestly, Nicole, 10% is too much. Like the way my expenses are right now, I just can't. And so I say, no problem. What about 5? What about 2? Like to me, it's better to do something than nothing. And others will say, you know what, I think I can actually do 12, or maybe I can do 15. And I will share with you guys, a lot of clients who put this into practice, they end up increasing the 10% usually around like 6 months in. They feel that they end up seeing that 10% actually isn't that crazy. It might feel like it is up front, but they kind of say, you know what, I didn't even miss it. Like, I think I can up that a little bit more, because I just feel like I've got everything under control and I just want to save more for myself. So 10% of your paycheck going to a savings type of account or an investment type of account, whereas the other, or the remainder of your paycheck essentially goes to all those other things that we had talked about that you had ripped off, like all your little pieces of paper beforehand. Now I guess this is the next piece, and this is the fun part where we get to actually talk about, how does your money grow? And so let's say, okay, so you've decided, you know what, I'm going to commit, I'm going to do 10% of my paycheck every month into a savings or investing account. But what does that look like in terms of dollars? How does the investing actually help you out? So here I'm going to kind of go through just 2 different concepts, because saving and investing are actually not interchangeable. They're not the same. And so this next example, I'm going to show you guys how they're not the same and why. Because saving and investing both play a part. They're both important. But yeah, so that they are different. So I'll show you guys that too. And it's funny, while I was creating this presentation for you guys, I was just sitting on the couch with my husband drinking wine, and we were just whatever. I was like chatting to him about the power of compound interest, and he said, this compound interest is like a fine wine. It only gets better with age. And I kind of laughed, and I was like, shit, that's really clever. And he's like, you gonna throw it in the presentation? And I told him no, but I totally did, because it was so good, because it really is true. Compound interest, time is your guys' best friend. And I'm going to show you now exactly how it works. And also, going with the theme, we'll stick with wine, because why not? So yeah, when I originally created a form of this presentation, I polled my girlfriends, and it's funny, I feel like we're probably all trapped in some sort of group chat or another. And so I asked my girlfriends, I said, hey, what is the average amount of wine you're drinking? And some were hesitant to tell me. My one buddy was like, well, was this pre-COVID, during COVID? Is it now? Like, what kind of average do you want? Because it's fluctuated quite a bit. So we kind of settled, after I polled them and kind of talked to friends, we just settled on 4. We're going to go with 4. Just to break it down for you guys, 4 bottles of wine, and we're going to assume we're classy. I mean, normally I buy like $11 bottles of wine, but 20 was just a nice round number, so we stuck with that. Okay, so yeah, so for 4 bottles of wine, we'll say we're drinking 1 every week for a month, $20. So in 12 months, that's $960 a year. Spread over 30 years, that's $28,800 spent on wine. No, this is not to shame anyone. That's just life, you guys. we drink wine and it's okay, you're allowed to. But the way that math breaks down is the exact same way savings would work, not investing, but savings. So when you put money into a savings account, and what you guys might be familiar with is like a high interest savings account, which is actually terribly named because it's not high interest. I think today it's most rates are like 0.05, like they're very, very low. But essentially, they are very safe investments. They are meant to keep your money away from the fluctuations of the market. So when you need that money, it is all there. Versus if you were investing and actually taking part in the markets, taking part in the stock market, and a pandemic hit, for example, like last March, and the markets all took a massive dip. If you were investing, you would have seen your money also dip with those market fluctuations, whereas saving, safe investments, your money is always going to keep level. It's not going to grow really, but it's always going to kind of stay at that level. So you can think of saving that way. So this way, like, so let's just say, okay, so for every bottle of wine you bought, you also threw $20 into a savings account. So in a year, you'd have $960 saved. After 30 years, you would have $28,800 saved. Not too shabby. That's all right. But now what I want to show you guys is what it would look like if instead of just saving the money, if we were to invest it instead. So all the metrics stay the same. You know, initial investment just means like, okay, let's say we're just going to start today. Like, yep, I thought that was cool. I'm going to start investing $20 for every bottle of wine I buy today. So we're starting at 0, but it's going to grow from there. The annual compound interest is 8%. That percentage I took just based on what a typical growth investment would do. So 8% is kind of a nice number that a growth investment, could potentially do. And then same thing though, $20 a week into the investment. Time horizon is still 30 years. Your total net invested, the total amount that left your pocket was $28,800. But instead of that amount, because we had this growth, because we had this compound interest, how much are you actually left with at the end of 30 years? And the answer is, just shy of $130,000. And so when you guys look at the difference, that's more than 4 times the amount than if you had just saved it. By investing, now you've grown that money 4 times more than if you had just saved it in a safe investment. So that's how compound interest can work. But to put it even on a bigger scale for you guys to show you the benefits if you decided to, okay, like maybe you said, okay, $20 is great, but I can afford more. Like I want to throw more into an investment. So I just said, for shits and giggles, let's go with $150. So for every bottle of wine, instead of $20 into an investment, you guys are going to throw $150 into an investment. Everything stays the same. Initial investment is 0. The annual compound interest is going to be 8%. So it's compounding at 8% interest every year for 30 years. And $150 a week works out to $600 a month at the end of 30 years. $917,000. And so just shy of $1 million. So I just want to show you guys the power of investing is there. There's a reason you're going to get told that, investing is a good thing. And just by showing here, like usually the numbers, it's the best thing to do is show you the numbers because numbers don't lie. Like this is just kind of the best way to show it. So if you can start to commit to putting something away for yourself in terms of an investment and then not touch it, because like I said, back to Jared's comment, the best thing you can do for compound interest is let it age. The longer you can let it go, the better the compound interest and the more time it has for that compound interest to work. So here's what you just learned. $917,000 is a lot of money. And it's great. And it's just by paying yourself first, treating yourself like the most important bill every month. Pretty great. The next thing, compound interest is important. But so is wine. So do both because balance, you guys. Right? That's what everyone preaches these days. So I think in terms of where you can invest your money, in Canada, we do have these two kind of core houses, and that's how actually I purposely did that, because I explain RSPs and TFSAs as houses, because I think it just explains it well. So when we're talking about investing, so again, going back to you, if you decided, okay, yep, like I'm committed, I want to start putting money towards an investment, but where or how do I do that? Where does it go? An RSP and a TFSA is a great place to start. And so, kind of to the point before, because they're houses, they're just shelters for your investments to live inside. So once you figure out what the investment is, so whether it be a mutual fund, whether it be an exchange traded fund, or an ETF, which I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about these days, it can literally be Tesla stock, it can be, pretty much anything can live under these houses. So you just have to decide what investment makes the most sense for you. And then after you do that, then you can decide which house should the investment live under. And these are just some, I guess, high level just information about what the difference is between the TFSA and the RSP. But the biggest one is, honestly, RSPs, you get tax savings right off the top. So if you put money into an RSP, you're going to get an immediate tax savings on your tax return either that year or that following year. And then the money inside the RSP, kind of like we were saying, that compound interest, it's going to grow tax-free year after year after year. And then when you decide to take it out, that's when you get taxed. In this industry, a lot of the time, the conversation goes to, you would want to invest in an RSP when you're making more money theoretically, or when you're in a higher tax bracket. So when you eventually retire, your tax bracket theoretically will be a little bit lower, and so you're getting the tax savings while you're saving throughout those years and while you're in a higher bracket, which means a bigger tax savings, where when you pull it out, you're owing the government less money back, so you're winning the tax game essentially. That's a theory behind the RSP. It honestly depends on your own personal situation. That's another thing where, as a certified financial planner, I would come in and say, okay, let's actually talk about how much money do you want in retirement, and is it going to throw you into a different bracket or not? And if not, then there might be other strategies that we're going to put in place. We'll still use the RSP, but how we use it might be a little bit different. And just on the flip side here, the TFSA is, you don't get any tax savings up front. Basically, after tax money goes in, but the money that does grow in there, so again, that compound interest, when you take it out, totally tax-free. No tax slips. You don't have to give any money back to Justin. It's literally all yours to keep. All the growth, all the contributions, everything. So yeah, both excellent vehicles. I usually, depending on the person, of course, but there's usually a place for both of them in everyone's kind of savings journeys or lives. So it's just a matter of figuring out what makes sense for you, kind of based on your goals, based on your time horizon, and all those different things. Okay, so next kind of core concept, so that was saving. Now we're going to kind of move into debt. Okay, so debt management, that's another big one. So first one, you're saving, you've got, we'll say the automatic savings is going, you've got your 10% going every month. That's kind of one piece. The second piece is making sure that your debt is under control. And just over the years, this is honestly my own observations. I've kind of broken debt and why people get into debt down into these 4 categories. And I think, honest to God, debt, it's such a doom and gloom thing. Like, everyone always talks about it as if it's just the worst thing that can happen to a person. And that people who are in debt are just not financially savvy, or they're really bad with money. I just feel like there's all these ridiculous concepts out there about debt, and honest to God, based on my own experience with clients, none of that holds true. Literally none of it. These 3 things are what I see most. It's just it's a lack of understanding, not quite understanding how debt vehicles work, how credit works, and maybe even what kind of strategies need to go around them so you're not accumulating more debt, just not kind of unconsciously. Another one I see often is just lack of support. It's tough, you guys, especially with, I say, social media is such a tough one these days. We see everyone's highlights all the time. Not so much traveling anymore, because none of us can go anywhere, but, just buying things. We see people's houses. We see people's, just whatever purchases online, and we just kind of feel like, man, like, should I have that? I don't know. And if you don't have a support system saying like, no, you're good, or just, this is where a financial planner can kind of come into play too, is just to be that kind of cornerstone, to give you, just comfort and saying, no, you're okay. Like, you're not playing catch up with anyone. You're actually exactly where you need to be right now. You're good. So that's another reason. And then kind of the third one is just necessity. People, kind of going back to your goals, you need to take on debt to accomplish certain things in your life. The two that honestly come up for me in the first place is student loans. People take on student loans to get degrees to hopefully better their lives later on. Totally makes sense. And then the other one is a mortgage. People want to own a home. And so a mortgage is a debt that most Canadians are going to take on at some point in their lives. So the last one is kind of this signaling, and I think this is where a lot of people think debt comes from, is just, I just put it as other people matter with respect to how we behave around money. So it just kind of, we accumulate debt, we build debt because we're buying way more than we need to, or we're kind of spending way over our means. And yes, it can happen, but I honestly think it's not to show people how cool we are. I think it's more to do with these three things here. It's just maybe a lack of understanding of how debt works, just a lack of support, having people kind of support you in your financial goals and not spending, and then also just necessity, just getting, literally just living life. So I want to show you guys today exactly how, not necessarily how credit cards work, but just the impact of not paying a credit card off. And so this is kind of my way of trying to help you understand both the benefit of paying it off in full every month versus just letting that balance roll over every single month and just paying the minimum in a dollar amount. Because I think once you see the dollar amount, it hits home a lot better. So yeah, essentially this is what I've done for you guys. Let's just theoretically say that you went to Best Buy over the weekend and bought an iPad. We'll just call it an iPad. And so let's say the sale price was just over $1,000 and the original price was $1,699. So you're saving $600, which is great. Everybody likes a sale. And so a couple things I'm going to assume here in terms of the credit card you're using. We're just going to say that you have no other balances on the card. So we'll just assume that you got the card in the mail that day, kind of just ripped it out of the envelope. It's brand new. You're going to take it for a run, take it for an iPad. But yeah, there's no other balances at this point. The card is charging you 19.99% interest, which is very typical for a credit card. They kind of range between 18 and 21%. So I just kind of went with the most common. And then also we're going to say that instead of paying it off every month, or instead of paying it off all in one hit, you're going to just go with that minimum every single month. So whatever the minimum shows up on your statement, you're going to throw the minimum on there. So here's how this is actually going to play out, and I want to show you the numbers. It will actually take you 11 years and 6 months to pay off that credit card. So that just over $1,000 you pay for that iPad is going to take you over a decade to pay off, which in and of itself is kind of nuts. And I think this is kind of the part too, like when you see debt on a revolving basis, we don't always think about how long or how not long it'll take us, because we just always say, whatever, just throw something on there, I'll pay off a little bit next month, whatever. So those are the numbers. Legit, when you crunch them, it would take you 11 years and 6 months to pay that off, which means you're actually going to pay $2,000, like $2,212 for the iPad. So that, if you guys have done the calculation in your head, that's over $1,000 in interest. So what I've done is I've taken the price of the iPad that you paid plus the interest, put them together over those 11 years, you're actually paying just over $2,200 for the iPad now, based on the interest you were actually paying as well. And if you want to think of it this way, which was originally, the actual iPad isn't even worth that much money. It was only worth, not on sale, $1,700. So you've overpaid, nearly $500 on something just to the bank, just to own this thing that wasn't even worth that to begin with, that you got on sale for just over $1,000. So this is kind of, in terms of, if you want to think of the power of compound interest can help you make your money grow, credit cards, and debt instruments, so lines of credit, loans, all those kinds of things, if you don't have a good handle on them, they can do exactly the opposite of compound interest. Well, it's not the opposite of compound interest. It's compound interest. It's just working against you instead of for you. So it's eroding your wealth by that percentage. And the way I kind of explained this actually to the pharmacist the other day when I did the presentation for them, I said, if you were putting money into an investment and making 8%, but then you had this credit card debt and it was charging you 20%, that 12% spread is actually, you can think of it as taking like 8 steps forward, but like 12 steps back. Because for every 8% compounded yearly growth you're getting, you're also losing 20% on that debt you owe, because theoretically that money's going into interest that you just owe to the bank. So it just, in terms of debt, it's just good to understand paying those balances off is going to benefit you huge. So this is just some stuff, again, this is what I share with clients a lot of the time. We of course create debt strategies for people, but these are just some kind of high level strategies that you can kind of take home, put in your pocket for yourselves. First and foremost, set financial goals, you guys. I think, honest to God, that makes the biggest difference. If you're working towards something, I tell people it kind of creates friction when you want to go spend something that, I don't want to say that you don't need to spend, but if you always have these goals in the back of your head, you'll start to, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, ask yourself, is this whatever I'm buying or whatever I'm spending on, is it moving me towards or moving me further away for these goals I set for myself? And that goes in, this is life in general, but especially in your finances too. I just say, lay out your financial goals so you know what you're working towards. So your money essentially has a job. Your money isn't just getting saved for nothing or just getting spent for nothing. It's, I would say, give your money a job, essentially. Put goals around all the money you make and spend. Therefore, hopefully it kind of helps you guys just tune into exactly what you're doing with it. Spend less than you make. It's a pretty simple one, but basically the concept here is, don't treat your debt like an extra paycheck. Credit card is not. So for example, if you have a credit card and let's say there's a $5,000 limit on there, that credit card is not an extra $5,000 on top of the paycheck you're getting. That is just a way for you to manage the money you spend, but you should really only be spending, the amount of money that you actually physically have coming in. So that's just another way. Just never think as debt or credit as extra money for you. Always think of it as a tool, and honestly only, the thing that you're using to supplement what you're physically actually making. Another one, of course, just based on the example we did, pay your credit cards off every month. I just say it's imperative, because those interest rates are just so high and it will just crush you if you let it kind of amount. So yeah, do your best, try to get that paid off every month. And that kind of goes back to try not to, spend more than you need to. And then if you do have some debts accumulated, the best strategy, in my opinion, is to just aim to pay off the highest interest debts first, because those are the ones that are eroding your wealth the fastest. It's known as the avalanche method, and you guys can go and Google this later. I won't get too far into it, but yeah, basically it just means, for example, if you've got a credit card at a 20% interest rate and then also a line of credit at, we'll say, 6.5%, of course, do your minimums. You always have to pay your minimums, but I would say, and I actually just did this with a client the other day too, we rejigged her money. So she was actually paying a little bit less on the line of credit and actually more towards the credit card to get that payment down faster. And it actually ended up shrinking the amount of interest she paid overall, plus it shrunk the amount of years it was going to take her to pay it off. So yeah, I would say if you're kind of trying to tackle a bunch of debts at once, getting that highest interest debt first tackled is probably your best bet. And again, I just kind of bring this up to let you guys know, social media versus reality, know the difference. It is super easy to get caught up sometimes, in terms of just seeing other people buying a bunch of things. But, coming from someone who gets to go behind the curtain on everyone's kind of balance sheet, you never really know what people have going on. They may have tons of debt. They may have parents who've supplemented their incomes for them. They might be super frugal, spenders, and then they just spend big on these couple things. You never know what anyone else has got going on. So I would just say the best advice I can give is just focus on your own personal best, set your own goals, and honestly just focus on those, because everyone else has their own story. Everyone's got their own stuff going on. So those would be the 5 kind of core debt strategies that are just easy to implement now and that you guys can take with you when you go. A couple notes on credit. If you guys have questions on credit, this is a great place to go. The Government of Canada website has a really good kind of page that just goes over like what are creditors looking for, what does it mean when they ask for certain things. But it'll just give you a better idea if you're kind of curious on like what makes a good credit and why does my credit even matter? This is a good source. So we're here in terms of insurance. Okay, guys, so this is your 3rd pillar. This is the 3rd kind of core concept that I want you to take away with you as you go to kind of build that financial independence and that financial security for yourselves. Insurance, I feel like, gets a bad rap, but it is so important. And I think why it gets a bad rap is because it's not explained well all the time, or people just don't quite understand what they need certain insurance products for and feel like sometimes it's just getting pushed on them. So I just quickly want to go through just the 3 that are probably going to come up for you the most, and just what they mean, how you would calculate them yourself, so you can kind of take a little bit of autonomy there when you are meeting with someone. They're not just spitting numbers at you. You can kind of have an idea of like, okay, I know what I already need, or I kind of know what I need. So disability insurance, this is one that I got to experience personally. So Jared, that's my husband, and we were in a head-on collision just about 5 years ago now. And he is a SAS Power worker, so he's a labor guy. He's got to walk for his job. And he basically obliterated his right femur and completely crushed his left patella. So he was unable to physically walk. He was confined to a wheelchair for about 4 months. And then he kind of moved into crutches. After that, I mean, he didn't get around that great for about 4 more months. And then finally he was able to, start walking a little bit. But basically from the time of the accident all the way until the time he went back to work, it was over a year. So had he not had disability insurance, we would have been basically confined just to my income. We would have just been living on what I was bringing in. He would have had nothing. And so just what that can look like is basically, if you guys have, debt repayment, like that sometimes gets halted, which can obviously be very detrimental. I mean, you can't just stop your mortgage payments, but if you don't have the money, then what do you do? So things like that. We wouldn't have been able to keep saving. We have a saving plans ourselves implemented, and so that would have been something we would have had to just completely X until we had both incomes coming back in. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things that we would have just had to stop, not to mention, I mean, helping Jared throughout a year when he couldn't walk was difficult enough. So disability insurance, like I said, it's something that I experienced firsthand. Jared had a great plan with SAS Power. And so I just want to explain to you guys what it looks like, what disability insurance actually does. So in terms of income, the way it works is they're going to give you a certain level based on your pre-disability income when you run into either, and disability will cover both like illness and injury. So it could be kind of a car accident or it could be cancer diagnosis. Both would work depending on the policy, I guess. But yeah, there's going to be a certain limit that they're going to give you. A lot of group plans, so stuff that you would get through an employer, usually sit between the 60 and 70% mark. So 60 and 70% of your pre-disability wage. So like, let's say you're making $5,000 a month, 70% would drop you down to $3,000. That would be the absolute max that an insurance company would give you. And the reason for that is basically if they were to give you more, the insurance company they want it to hurt a little bit because they want you to, yes, eventually go back to work. They don't, want to incentivize you to say, like disability is pretty great. I'm making like 90% of my wage right now. So yeah, they want it to be low enough that it incentivizes you to go back, but they also want it to be enough that you can cover expenses, you can cover your daily living, all those kinds of things. So the expense piece, basically, if I'm putting disability in place for someone, yes, we look at their income, we say, what do you qualify for? But then based on that number, I always kind of do a quick analysis on what are your household monthly expenses, because we might not have to take the max. We might want to just cover, those expenses. And those expenses could be mortgage, savings, debt repayments, living. Like we can kind of cater and massage that into whatever made sense for you. But that's another kind of piece to think about in terms of disability. What type of bills would need to get paid while you're not working. And then the third piece there is just what other insurance is available. And as an insurance representative, that's something that I would look at for you. I would say, okay, do you have workers' comp available to you? Do you have EI available to you? Do you have group benefits, or are you a self-employed person? Are you are your own boss, therefore you're providing all this kind of insurance for yourself. So that comes into play too. So that's essentially disability insurance. You can just think of it's for you. It's to give you an income when you can't work based on an injury or based on illness. And it's going to provide you a monthly income for a certain period of time based on the actual policy that's put in place. The next one is I would call it like a supplement to disability insurance. And it's kind of a newer product. It's called critical illness insurance. And I'll get the question a lot of the time. They'll say, you know what, like I've got disability. Why would I get critical illness insurance? And again, this just kind of goes back to, it totally depends on your situation. Example I can give, again, is just based on my own personal experience. I had a buddy whose fiance was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they ended up traveling to the States quite a bit. They did dip into experimental drugs that weren't covered by the Canada Health System. And my friend ended up taking a good amount of time off work to be with him during all these treatments. So when it comes to disability insurance, it's not going to cover any of that stuff. If you guys need to travel out of province or out of country to supplement whatever kind of care you're getting, disability won't cover that. Same with experimental drugs. Same with if your spouse wants to take time to be with you, they're not the one disabled, so they can't get money from a disability plan. Only you can. So same with me and Jared. When Jared was disabled, if I wanted to take a month off to be with him, it's not like my disability plan is going to kick in to go be with my disabled husband. He just gets the disability benefit. I just have to take the hit and not get money for a month or whatever it is. So critical illness, that's where it can kind of be a nice supplement to disability depending on what you decided you wanted. And also another thing, it is just based on illness. It's not injury. So if it was an accident, like a car accident, kind of same as my other example, nope, can't get critical illness. It's just based on getting sick. And usually the big four they talk about is it'd be cancer, there's stroke, coronary bypass surgery, and then also heart attack. Those are the big four. But now a lot of these insurance protections cover, I think, it's close to 26 or 30 different illnesses. So they've come a long way in the last couple of years. But yeah, that's kind of where I see that fitting in. And again, it would just be an actual analysis of okay, how much do you think you would need? And that's all part of the conversation with clients as well. But that's where I can see critical illness kind of playing a really big role in someone's life. A quick note too, critical illness and disability insurance typically are actually quite expensive. And the reason being is because they get used a lot. There are a lot of disability claims. There are a lot of illness claims. It's kind of one of those things where if you do get covered, and I know this probably sounds like an insurance-y thing to say, but it actually is a privilege to have that insurance because not everybody has the ability to be covered. I would just say it's better to look into it now while you're listening to this presentation, just kind of looking into, I would say, ask your group, if you're through an employer, ask your group or employer, ask your benefits coordinator, your HR person, I just want to know what I'm covered for. Can you send me my group stuff? I want to know what the coverage is. I want to know when it kicks in. I want to know how much it's for. It's just good to know these numbers. And same with critical illness. You can even ask, do I have that? Is that even available to me? Can I get it? Yeah, it's just, these are good questions to ask. So those are kind of the two insurances that I say they're for you. If something bad happens, you get the benefit. Whereas life insurance is a little bit different. That one is for the people you leave behind. So you would put the insurance in place. It's on your life, but when you're not here tomorrow, it's the people that are left behind that benefit. They're the ones that get the money. In terms of how you would calculate a life insurance need, I usually tell clients it's kind of two things. And yes, you can break it down into more things, but basically it's two main things. The first is to cover debts. And so what I would do with usually a couple, I'd say, okay, guys, what kind of debts do you have on your plate today? A lot of the time there's mortgage. Usually there's some car loans in there. Sometimes there's credit card debt. It can, there's, especially in terms of working with millennials, there's usually a lot of debt because we're in the accumulation phase of our lives. And so I say, okay, so if your partner wasn't here tomorrow, would you be able to service all those debts? And if the answer is no, then of course we say, all right, what do we need to put in place to make sure that all those debts are wiped if they were to get hit by a bus tomorrow? But even if the answer is yes, I say, do you want to leave? Like, do you want to have all those debts to take care of when your partner's not here? And usually the answer is no too. They say, well, no, like I'd rather them just be gone so I don't have to worry about them, in lieu with dealing with this awful thing that's happened. So yeah, so that would be the first thing, is just we kind of figure out, okay, like what debts do you have? What needs to be covered? That's one part of the life insurance. And then the other piece is if your partner wasn't here tomorrow, of course, they're not working anymore. Therefore, they're not bringing a paycheck in anymore. So what is your life, or how hurt is your lifestyle going to be if you don't have that paycheck coming in anymore? And that is when the analysis starts to come in and say, okay, yes, it would definitely, there would be some sort of downfall if I didn't have my partner's income, but where kind of what my job is to figure out, okay, so like how much of that income would you need to sustain a life that you're currently living, and to also provide for your kids, and to also, do all the things that you still want to do. And so those are the conversations that I would have with someone. But in terms of life insurance, those are kind of the two things that you can think about. And I just did a quick and dirty calculation here. I threw this on Instagram a while back. But it just, like I said, I mean, this is not detailed by any means, but it will give you an idea of what you could potentially need. And I guess another thing, just a quick caveat to that too, life insurance, there is a point where some people need it and some people don't. And so there is definitely, with all insurance products, of course, like it needs analysis. Actually figuring out what do you truly need and what don't you need is always part of the conversation. And so that's something I'm always working with clients. They say, okay, we've got all these tools to use in terms of protection, but which ones make sense for you and which ones do you actually need? So yeah, so that's life insurance. It's just to protect your loved ones. It's protect people when you're no longer here. So yeah, so again, just, you guys know who I am off the top. I wanted to give you a bit of resources. This is just, things I've read, things I listen to, things that I think have great information that you guys can just, if you want to kind of continue on your financial planning journey, this is all great stuff to listen to, read everything. The Wealthy Barber, that's honestly, it's the fundamental concepts, and I feel like that's probably just something I really enjoy. I just love going back to fundamentals, but good advice is good advice. And so even though the book is old, it still has such great information. So that's one I would definitely say. Worry Free Money by Channing Simmons, which is funny. I think she presented at the library last year, which is so cool. But she's just a woman from Toronto who's also a CFP. And her book is great in terms of debt management and cash flow planning and budgeting, all that kind of stuff. It was a really good read. And for all you investors out there, people who want to learn more about money growth, how investments work, the different types of investments out there, The Psychology of Money is excellent. It's such a great book. I just read it about 3 months ago and it's awesome. I would recommend it to everyone. Yeah, but I just put Nicole's Notes Book Club and newsletter. That's something that I created just to give, just read some financial planning books, but also I create a newsletter every Friday just to kind of summarize my own thoughts on the book. So it's just another resource for you guys. A couple podcasts, Instagram, you guys can follow me there. And just threw a couple more there as well. Yeah, and then in terms of just getting in touch with me, you guys can reach out to me on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page, and then also my email, my answer as well, and that's just my work number. But yeah, I always say when I give presentations like this, if you have questions that are specific or you just want to know more about what we talked about, these are the places to find me. But yeah, I guess just to kind of wrap it all up, you guys, it's just if you kind of focus on those three things, so saving, focusing on saving for yourself first, debt management and just getting a handle on your own debt, and then also putting the proper protection in place. If you have those three things working for you, the rest of your financial plan will actually, I don't want to say fall into place, but that is such a good rock solid foundation to have that I think everything else will kind of gravy train from there. But yeah, that's kind of it for me. I'm so proud of myself that I did that in exactly an hour.